my job is to tell the truth about what I think has happened. I just don't believe this wild hypothesis, based on no evidence whatsoever, that somebody inflated the stomach enough to kill the baby.
This baby would not have died but for Letby's interference. What I'm sure occurred was that he was stabilizing. She was on duty. It was coming up to midnight. She went into his nursery. She injected him intravenously with air. That caused immediate collapse and also explains why resuscitation failed. That is what I am now confident happened to this particular baby.
In recent months, there has been much doubt cast over the medical evidence presented by Dr. Dowie Evans, especially in the case of baby C. It was revealed by the BBC's File on 4 programme that the X-ray he used as evidence was taken when Lucy Letby had the day off and had never even met the baby. Subsequently, Evans changed his mind over the cause of death, but he still insists that Lucy Letby murdered baby C using some other means unproven. Why does he think that? Simply because she was there. During the trial, Nick Johnson KC alleged that Lucy Letby was alone with baby C at the time of his collapse, and that therefore she must have caused it. We decided to look at the witness testimony to establish whether there is any evidence of Lucy Letby being alone in nursery room 1 with baby C. On the night of June 13, 2015, Sophie Ellis was baby C's designated nurse in nursery room 1. She was a junior nurse with limited experience. Supervising her was Melanie Taylor, an experienced nurse. Nurse Taylor was also caring for another baby in the same room. We don't know which incubators the babies were occupying, but it's likely they were adjacent to each other. Room 1 was the nursery reserved for babies with the most serious conditions, those requiring one-to-one intensive care. Lucy Letby, meanwhile, was assigned to 2 babies in room 3. Nurse B, the shift leader, was also on duty, as well as 2 other nurses. We don't know which rooms or babies they were assigned to. Baby C's collapse was recorded at 11:15 p.m. The prosecution posited a window of only 6 minutes between 11:09 p.m. and 11:15 p.m. During this time, Lucy was accused of entering the room unseen and attacking baby C. But no one saw her go in there. No one saw her committing any harmful act. And remember, there were 5 other nurses on shift within that very small unit. Sophie Ellis testified that soon after feeding baby C at 11 p.m, she left the room for a short time, going just around the corner. The prosecutor said she went to the nurses' station, in which case she could not have failed to notice Lucy Letby coming out of room 3, had she done so. She said that upon hearing an alarm sounding, she returned to nursery room 1 and saw Lucy Letby in there. She didn't remember if Melanie Taylor was also in the room. She stated that there was always a nurse in the room looking after baby C, even when she left the room briefly. She would not have left 2 intensive care babies alone in there. There's no mention of Lucy Letby being in there at the point at which Sophie Ellis left the room, but we do know that Melanie Taylor was caring for her own assigned baby in there, as well as supervising the care of baby C. There's nothing to indicate that Melanie Taylor went anywhere else, and really, what valid reason could there be for both of them to leave the intensive care nursery at the same time? We suggest that Melanie Taylor remained in the room throughout the unfolding events. In her trial testimony given in October 2022, Melanie Taylor said initially that she didn't think she was in the room at the time of the collapse. However, in her police statement made several years earlier in 2018, she said she was pretty sure she was in room 1, feeding her assigned baby at that time, and that she was called over by Sophie Ellis when baby C collapsed. By the time of her appearance at the trial, over 7 years had passed since the incident. On cross-examination, when referred to her statement by defense lawyer Ben Myers KC, she stated that her memory had deteriorated since then, and agreed that what was in her police statement was correct. She was in room 1 at the time in question. Now we turn to Nurse B, the shift leader on that night in June 2015. She recalled a shout for help when baby C collapsed. She went into room 1 and saw Melanie Taylor and Sophie Ellis. They were attending to baby C. She said Lucy Letby wasn't in the room when she entered. In summary, Sophie Ellis didn't remember if Melanie Taylor was in nursery room 1 when she went out briefly. But she confirmed that there would always be a nurse in there. We say that there's no reason to think that that nurse would have been anyone other than Melanie Taylor, who was supervising the care of baby C, as well as being responsible for her own assigned baby. Melanie Taylor agreed she was there at the time of the collapse, feeding her assigned baby. Nurse B saw Melanie Taylor and Sophie Ellis in the room when she responded to the call for help, but she didn't see Lucy Letby in there. We conclude that Melanie Taylor was in the room at the time of baby C's collapse. That being the case, it would have been highly noticeable to Nurse Taylor if Lucy Letby had entered the room and engaged in any way with baby C, let alone attacking him in a way to cause his collapse and death. Outside of an emergency situation, even touching an intensive care baby assigned to someone else would be a breach of protocol, something that would not go unnoticed or forgotten. If there had been an attack on baby C, it's inconceivable that Melanie Taylor could have failed to notice it happening directly in front of her. In conclusion, with a potential witness in the room, and indications that Lucy Letby didn't even enter room 1 until after the collapse, it's clear that she is innocent of the charge of murdering baby C. No proof of murder, no witnesses, no DNA or forensic evidence, unreliable medical expert witnesses. It's about time this conviction was overturned.
Welcome to this press conference. My name is Mark McDonald. I am a barrister and I represent Lucy Letby, and I have been her barrister now for 3.5 months. And in that time we've made significant progress, and I'm going to make 2 announcements today of the progress that we have made. I've got 2 statements I'm going to be reading out because there are in effect 2 announcements that I'm making today. One statement is from me. The second is from 2 consultant neonatologists, Dr. Neil Aiton and Dr. Svelena Dimitrova. Let me deal with the first statement from me. Today, the defence are announcing that they will be immediately seeking permission from the Court of Appeal to take the exceptional but necessary decision to apply to reopen the appeal of Lucy Letby and immediately review all her convictions. In August 2023, Lucy Letby was convicted in the Crown Court at Manchester after a trial lasting 10 months, 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. On the 24th of May of this year, the matter was before the Court of Appeal, but all applications for leave to appeal were refused. The primary ground of appeal at the previous hearings related to the admissibility before the jury of evidence from the lead prosecution expert, Dr. Darry Evans. The defence argued twice at the trial that Dr. Evans' evidence should be disregarded. This was refused by the trial judge. It was then later argued in the Court of Appeal. That was refused by the Court of Appeal. Remarkably, Dr. Evans has now changed his mind on the cause of death of 3 of the babies, baby C, baby I, and baby P. Dr. Evans had said to the jury that Lucy Letby had injected air down a nasal gastric tube and that this had led to the death of the 3 babies. This was repeated to the Court of Appeal, who may have been misled when they ruled on the applications for leave of conviction in the May of last year. Dr. Evans has also said that he has revised his opinion in relation to baby C and has written a new report that he has given to the police. This was some weeks, actually months ago now. Despite numerous requests, the prosecution have yet to give this report to the defence. The defence will argue that Dr. Evans is not a reliable expert, and given that he was the lead expert for the prosecution, we say that all the convictions are unsafe. The second statement I'm going to read relates to fresh evidence relating to 2 very detailed and lengthy reports, one on baby C and one on baby O. And let me read out the statement by the 2 neonatologists. We have been instructed by solicitors representing Lucy Letby, and so far we have examined 2 cases, baby O and baby C, in great detail and presented joint reports. To prepare these reports, we had full access to the following: the hospital notes, the post-mortem records, multiple reports of David Evans, as well as other experts' witness statements and statements submitted as part of the pre-trial investigation. I should also add, as well as transcripts of the trial as well. We have taken considerable time and care, and these reports provide a thorough analysis. Our reports demonstrate that there are identifiable medical reasons why both babies became unwell, sadly did not respond to resuscitation, and subsequently passed away. We have set out clearly within our reports evidence showing that these babies could not reasonably be described as well or stable. Neither should their deteriorations be described as unexplained. Our reports contain careful, justified new evidence which has not been presented before, either in court or as part of previous examinations of these cases by multiple sources. It is not our role to determine any impact this new evidence might have on the legal process. Although some of the medical information within the report is complex, it is possible to draw clear and sound conclusions which we believe will stand up to scrutiny. In this respect, we are completely happy for our reports to be subject to appropriate independent expert critical analysis. We have provided evidence that baby O died due to issues relating to the resuscitation. Baby C died due to problems caused by failing placental function at the end of the pregnancy. We have seen no evidence of deliberate harm to these babies by anyone. Despite the huge public interest, we fully understand the reports have now been submitted and we cannot make further statements or comments at this stage. The release of limited experts or brief soundbites would not do justice to the detailed arguments and conclusions made within the reports as a whole. That last paragraph, in effect, they are not going to be making any more public comments about their own reports. Now, those are the two statements. There may be some questions either from me or the neonatologist on the panel or anybody who wants to address statistics. So I'll open the floor up. Any questions?
I've got one.
John Sweeney.
Yes, so John Sweeney, you say that Downey Evans should no longer be considered to be a reliable witness, a reliable expert. Can you expand on that?
Yes. Dr. Evans has given a number of interviews following the conviction of Lucy Letby to newspapers, documentaries and podcasts. In those interviews, he has said a number of things and has said things that are inconsistent with some of the evidence that has been served and that I have seen. That's the first issue I have with him. I think it's remarkable that an independent expert who gave evidence for the prosecution continues to speak to the media and is continuously on TV and in podcasts and giving interviews. But that is aside.
Can you explain in simple terms what he said in court and what he said since?
Yes.
And why that causes you trouble?
No, of course I will. So we know that he was the lead prosecution expert. And he was the first person to examine the notes of the babies and give the first initial reports. He has come up with, in essence, 3, maybe 4 ways that he says collapse was due to these babies, of which some of them ultimately died. Air embolism being a primary one. Second to that is air, he says, being injected down the nasal gastric tube, causing a splinting of the diaphragm, which has led to suffocation, which has led to the death. He has now said that that is not how the babies died. He said that 1 year after Lucy Letby was convicted. So you have a person who went before the jury, gave one theory, and then has now said that that is not the theory that he doesn't longer stand by. He says that is not how they died. Now there is one caveat to that, and that's baby P, because in baby P it's slightly confusing because it's air down the nasal gastric tube, but he also added, it would seem, air embolus as well. So I put that caveat in my statement, but certainly in relation to baby the other 2 babies, that is correct. And that's what the Court of Appeal was told. And that's the important thing. Sometimes Dr. Evans did change his view, certainly on one occasion, whilst giving evidence. But the Court of Appeal were not, the prosecution did not stand by that in the Court of Appeal. They said the child, particularly baby C, died as a result of air going down the nasal gastric tube. And that's what causes us concern. So we say, and it's a theory that we need to put before the Court of Appeal, that we want them to reopen their the last judgment and to re-look at it and to decide whether or not this expert, this lead expert, is reliable. And if it's not reliable, then all the convictions, we say, fall. Can I hand over to Richard Taylor, who's going to deal with those reports? Can you come up here? Is that okay?
Yeah, my name's Richard Taylor. I'm a neonatologist from Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. But as you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from the UK. In fact, I trained at Barts, qualifying in 1980. So with regard to these reports, I've only read one of the reports in full, and that is the report on baby O. I should qualify this by saying that I have not seen the medical records myself, but I have read the full report. And to summarize the medical evidence, baby O was doing reasonably well. There had been some concerns with abdominal distension, which was possibly related to excess gas going into the gastrointestinal tract. The baby had an apnea, and the medical staff, an apnea is a pause in breathing, and the medical staff responded to this by intubating the baby, placing the baby onto a ventilator, and baby was not unwell particularly, but it had an apnea, but they placed the baby on a ventilator and then put the baby on very high pressure settings. So in neonatology, when we ventilate babies, we ventilate by pressure rather than by lung volume. And this baby was placed on very high pressure settings, inappropriate for the fact that the baby actually had no lung disease at all. So the baby was being ventilated on very high pressure settings. Again, the nurses were concerned that the medical staff had actually left the unit. They then came back. Things didn't look quite right, and to summarize what happened, the nurse was again concerned that the abdomen was distended, and one of the doctors responded to this by placing a needle into the abdomen. So they directly aspirated the abdomen, and they chose to use a point which in medical parlance is called McBurney's point. This is a description of the point that is used for performing an appendectomy. The baby did not need an appendectomy. This is a newborn. Appendectomy is completely irrelevant to it. If an aspirate was going to be attempted, it should have been done on the left side, but in fact the doctor used McBurney's point, which is on the right side. As I have already said, the baby was on very high pressure settings, and this is confirmed by an X-ray of both the abdomen and the chest. And the settings were so high that the baby's liver was pushed right down into the pelvis. So when the doctor performed the aspiration of the abdomen, the needle perforated the liver. The baby was still being ventilated with a needle in the liver. The liver was now being lacerated by the needle. And this led to bleeding, free blood going into the abdomen. The baby went into shock. The shock was actually confirmed by a subsequent blood test, which showed that the baby's hemoglobin had halved, and they were unable to resuscitate the baby, partly because they didn't realize what they'd done.
What was the name of the doctor?
I don't think it's right that we name names at this stage.
I think the doctor knows who they are.
We don't.
I know. I have to say, from a personal point of view, that if this had happened to me, I'd be unable to sleep at night, knowing that what I had done had led to the death of the baby, and now there is a nurse in jail convicted of murder.
Having looked at the evidence, how strong do you think the evidence against Lucy Letby is compared to your theory? That, as I understand it, the doctor accidentally killed the baby by mistake.
The claim was that I think that Lucy Letby had injected air into the baby. I'm not even sure what the prosecution was claiming, but it's nonsense. Complete nonsense. The baby died from shock, from a liver perforation,
How confident is the team in this, that this is what happened?
The report stands out, and I understand that the report is partly based on, well, it's fully based, in fact, on the medical records, and the medical records actually include a statement that an aspiration of the abdomen occurred at McBurney's point.
Is it surprising that that wasn't discussed in court?
Very surprising, yes. I don't think that the case was reviewed very well. It's also surprising that it didn't come out in the autopsy. But I understand that the information that an attempted aspiration of the abdomen had been made, this was not conveyed to the pathologist. The pathologist was unaware of that.
Could I just ask you, is this information that you assume, was it available to the prosecution at the time of trial?
Yes.
The prosecution knew of this at the time of trial?
Well, they should have done, yes. It was available, yes.
They had the information?
Yes, it was in the medical records.
Could I just ask, yes, would the doctor have known what they'd done? I just want to be clear about that.
Did the doctor know what they did?
Yes.
If it had been me, I think, yes. I don't know whether they felt uncomfortable about it or what. I can't comment on that.
Can I ask if the doctor gave any evidence in the case against Letby?
I believe so. Yeah.
Was the doctor granted anonymity while giving evidence?
No.
May I
You
add
can.
something?
Yes. Do you want to come up and?
No, it's a very short point.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm aware that the second prosecution expert felt that the needle had been inserted at a level higher than McBurney's point, and of course that would mean that there would have been a much even greater chance of the liver having been perforated by this inappropriate action during resuscitation.
Yes.
And that they were aware of this.
Yeah. Apparently there was a photograph, and the incision mark appeared to be higher than McBurney's point, which makes it even more. So it makes it even more consistent with an injury to the liver. And the other part of it is that when the needle was inserted, and the doctor aspirated, instead of aspirating air or clear fluid, he aspirated blood. And the liver is a very vascular organ, so that fits with a needle in the liver.